patha, you say cuss. Patha.
Cuss.
Patha.
Cuss.
When I say patha, you say cuss. Patha.
Cuss.
Patha.
Cuss.
Patha.
Cuss.
Nice. When I say fag, you say get. No, I'm just kidding. That would be wrong. Well, here we all are. Whether you plan to be here or you just heard my gay siren call. At PATHICUS, a slideshow presentation about the mysterious workings of my brain. Over the course of our time together tonight, you will begin to learn A, what the fuck this word means, and B, my current understanding of my gender identity and its relationship to my sexuality and personhood, which may or may not have something to do with this Latin word behind me. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. My name is Kyle Mason. Many children know me as my semi-viral theater teacher, alter ego, Mr. Kyle. And many grown men know me as just good boy. Here's some fun facts about me. I am 26. Despite being 26, I'm not in grad school, nor have I ever been in grad school. I have gorgeous curly locks, a winning smile, and a great ass to boot. And last but certainly not least, I'm pretty sure I have undiagnosed obsessive-compulsive disorder. I'm here today to take a deep dive in my own brain and make a splatter painting with the contents I find inside. And tonight we'll specifically be focusing on my gender identity. Let me do some gender table setting before I really get into the meat and potatoes. I identify as a cisgender man. I am lucky enough to be a part of the glorious demographic known as cisgender white gay guys. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, what the fuck does a cis white gay guy have to say about gender? Which would be a great question, but the answer is actually surprisingly a lot. Masculinity in our culture right now is in an extremely dire state. So I am here as a sort of court jester figure to perhaps add a contour to our current societal perception of manhood. And while I do feel very connected to the idea of being cisgender, I also feel very complex, nuanced feelings of that identity that I'd like to share with you today that will maybe shed some light on what it means to be a 21st century cosmopolitan he-him fag. In looking within myself, I've begun to dissect how my gender identity is deeply influenced by my experience of sexuality and vice versa. Now, a quick temp check to get us started. Are we all familiar with the musical supergroup Boy Genius? Nice. Well, hello to those who put the B in LGBT. I ask this because I feel like my gender identity can be completely summarized by looking at the bridge of the song Not Strong Enough by Boy Genius. Are we familiar?
Yes!
So, if you haven't heard this song, it is truly a transcendent piece of music that I cannot believe exists, and it low-key changed my entire life, mainly due to this bridge, which just repeats this one phrase over and over while the music builds up to this cathartic release at the end. Always an angel, never a god. Always an angel, never a god. This phrase resonates with me so deeply that it feels like it reaches into my soul and pulls out a slimy, gelatinous sludge made up of the deeply entrenched gender anxiety within me. And it is within this angel-god binary that I have begun to find the crux of my gender issue. That is due to the fact that I feel like I'm unable to be dominant in a way that's expected of me as a man. Which leads me to do what high school sex education courses across this nasty country fail to do, and that is to talk to you about gay sex. Now, I know gay sex quite well. I'd even venture to say that we're friends. Sometimes we're enemies. Sometimes we're kind of mad at each other for no reason, but because we're not talking about it, it's only exacerbating our anger at each other. And then sometimes gay sex is my favorite thing in the world. Now, in my field, I'm what's most commonly known as a bottom. I find bottoming to be a fascinating thing that humans do. It's very much like, yes, work with what you've got, kids. And bottoming actually holds more authority than we realize, I think. See, bottoming is about preparation, and preparation is about time, and time is money, and money is power. So therefore, bottoming is power, and based on this logic and my own track record, I am like one of the most powerful men in the world. But the thing is, I haven't always seen myself or bottoming in this way. So I'm going to be really brave here, and go back to the beginning and tell you about the first time I had sex.
Yes!
Let me set the scene. Fall 2014. Oh, sorry, I mean, fall 2014. I am 15 years old and in my first relationship. Now, for the sake of my high school boyfriend's anonymity, I'll be using a different name in this story. So, we're going to call him something random, right? Let's say his name is, I don't know, Pedro. We're great together. No. Sorry, not the point. Okay, so in fall 2014, Pedro and I had been dating for a couple of months, which is kind of like marriage for a high school age gay couple. And after having multiple discussions about it, we decided we're going to have sex for the first time. And it'll be the first time for both of us. And so, on one very special romantic evening, after waiting in the parking lot of a CVS while Pedro ran inside to buy condoms, the moment finally came, no pun intended, and I did it. I lost my virginity the way that every horny teenager dreams about. In the back of a minivan. In the parking lot of a Mormon church. Directly across the street from my elementary school. It got these exact coordinates that I was if you're curious. Now, were these conditions ideal? No, they were not. But it was very what? Work with what you got. It has a very romanticized quality in my memory. You know, as I was, as once spoken by a prophet, quite literally losing all my innocence in the backseat. The overall experience was, I would say, completely average for one's first time having anal sex. I remember at some point in the evening being down on all fours, like this, by the way, and looking out through the fogged up rear window at this like gorgeous moonlight, this gorgeous street lamp on our hormone-riddled teenage bodies, and thinking to myself, this is it! This is sex! Now, an important detail surrounding this story and this relationship is that I was a sophomore in high school and Pedro was a senior. I in no way ever felt pressured or unsafe in any of this, to be clear, but I definitely was in the passenger seat when it came to the relationship, and my natural passiveness led me to being the bottom in this inaugural sexual encounter. So because this was the context for my first time having sex, the seeds were then planted in my young brain that this is the way to have sex, and that I am at my most sexually desirable when I am not the fucker, but rather the fuck kid. I've carried this belief with me for over a decade now, and it has ended up that I have been the bottom in every sexual situation I've ever been in. There have been a few times where I thought I could, flip it around, be the top. But when you try to put two ends of magnets together, and from far away it looks like they're magnets, but then as it gets closer, it just kind of no. And that's what it's felt like every time I've tried to top. It's very much like, I can do it. No problem. I can fuck someone. Yeah, I want to fuck someone. And then, girl, absolutely not. My body says, nice try, queen. My body says, get on your back, open your legs, and do what you do best, mama. And it is what I do best, for the record. Countless men whose names I couldn't tell you, but that's for me. Now, I know that having only ever bottomed isn't objectively a bad thing at all, but it's something that I personally carry with a level of shame, because I've subconsciously arrived at the conclusion that because I don't seem to have the ability to top someone, I must not be able to be dominant in a typical manly way, which makes me feel inferior despite feeling like a man in many other aspects of my life. So I have therefore associated only being a bottom with not being man enough. And believe it or not, but I have come to understand that this particular type of shame stems from an idea that has sociologically been around since, yes, the homosexuals of the Roman Empire. Let's get into it. Welcome to Kyle's history class. You can hear my voice clap once. Nice. Alright, my credentials, you ask. YouTube essays, a lot of weed, and a deep cosmic connection to homosexuals of the past, present, and future. Today we'll be discussing faggotry in the Roman Empire. So in the Roman Empire, gay was like, hey, kind of okay. Many Roman emperors had male lovers, including the Emperor Hadrian, who actually founded an entire city in honor of his long-term male lover Antinous after he died, which I would personally qualify as, extremely gay. And even the big guy, Julius Caesar, guess what? by sexual allegations. Yeah, new context, you know. Now, while men were still expected to get married and have children to carry on their name, it was relatively fine to fuck around with all genders on the side. The Roman Empire existed prior to the onset of Judeo-Christian dominance, and because of that, there wasn't a religion-based moral taboo around homosexual activity like we have today. However, that doesn't mean there wasn't taboo around it, it just looked slightly different. See, the Roman Empire was so structured around class and masculine dominance that it established its morals around these things too, including thoughts about faggotry. It was not the act of fucking a man that was seen as a problem. It was being fucked that was troubling to Romans. Because the Roman Empire was so patriarchal, it was believed intrinsically that men must dominate everything in their path, including those with whom they engaged in sexual activities. The concept of being penetrated by a man, especially if you were being penetrated by a man of a lower class than you, was so antithetical to the Roman ethos that there was actually language created to describe people who partook in such acts, which were almost like slurs. And one of those terms was this word. Welcome back. Pathicus. The term is derived from an ancient Greek verb that means to submit in sexual contexts, and there isn't a one-to-one term that we could translate it to in our contemporary vernacular, but a rough translation would be like bottom derogatory. For example, when used in a sentence, a gay guy in ancient Rome might have said, "Oh my god, girl, he is such a pass-around party Pathicus." And his taste in togas is so tacky. Or something like that. Sexuality was thought of in the Roman Empire in a penetrator passive binary, which, side note, is insane to think of bottoming as passive, because if you've ever been penetrated before, you know that it is quite an active experience. But I digress. But because being passive, aka being womanly, let's wake it up, was seen as such a horrible thing for a man to be, Pathicus became one of the ways to describe the men who were playing the passive role in sexual encounters. And they were shamed for doing it. Like, people have been bottom shaming since before they knew how to keep proper hygiene. We all understand that. Now, while our society looks completely different than it did during the Roman Empire, the idea of the shame baked into the word Pathicus is still around today in a lot of ways. For me, being the one who is penetrated during sex and allowing my masculine body to be in the hands of another feels diametrically opposed to the idea of always having to be dominant as a man. But because I learned how to be desirable by utilizing my natural pathicusness at a young age, I feel like I've trapped myself in a bottom box. And it is just me, a bottle of poppers, a douche, and a Lana Del Rey. I'm scared, okay? See, I've internalized this idea that because of this, I'm somehow a weaker man, because I'm always the fuck kid, never the fucker. I'm always the passive, never the penetrator. Always an angel, never a god. This six-word phrase has chipped away at my sense of gender when I think about who I present myself as in sexual situations. And I initially thought of being an angel as something that was inferior, because I associated the shame that society has placed on the idea of being submissive to a fellow man with Boy James's concept of angelness. Until I began to see that being an angel is actually, like, wait, kind of chic. Yeah, I may not be like a towering pillar of dominance and strength in a typical godly way, but like angels are literally complex, also high, interesting, also literally beautiful, literally heavenly beings, like they're actually divine messengers. And like, do I think that means I am also all of those things? Yes. Obviously. This angel-god binary Boy James has created has led me to understand a deep history of my bottom brethren. Knowing that men have had the shame of bottoming put upon them since the Roman Empire somehow comforts me in my own shame about it, because it tells me that this type of shame is usual for a man in my position, literally speaking, to feel, and that this type of shame is placed on us, not one that inherently lives within us. Although I still have an insecurity about having only ever bottomed, I'm simultaneously also somehow affirmed in my manhood by knowing that I exist in a long lineage of men who have had the shame of bottoming put upon them that dates back to thousands of years ago. Like, they tried to stop us, and yet on we bottom. On we bottom. And that's powerful. I like to think that the spirit of those Roman Pathicuses were with me on that fateful night all this time. And I think they'd be proud to know I'm carrying on our ways. Although they were shamed for being talented enough to bottom, because it is a talent, thank you, they were angels and not gods, just like me. And what a beautiful thing it is to be an angel. And my God, let me tell you what a beautiful thing it is to be a bottom. Because we know how to what? Work with what?
We got it.
Thank you so much.